welcome all, and as some of you settle into the room, let me first state that it's an absolute honor to be here with many of you, many friends, and also many of the other speakers. And I'm going to share with you really a fairly intuitive storyline. I suspect nothing I say to you today will be entirely new, but I'm going to speak about creativity as absolutely fundamental in being good at what we do. In fact, if I think about what this really is about this. Everything begins with passion. My story, about 25 years or so, is fairly unfiltered. And here's my thesis. Success is going to be fueled by your courage. Now, you don't all have to be academic surgeons. You don't all have to be researchers. But for each and every one of us at every single level, your success is going to be fueled by your courage to look inward. Absolutely understand what it is that you love to do and try to be consistent with your current values and your own morals. Embrace change, accept new challenges, be creative, and here's the big one. To be creative and take risk, you have to have some failures. Nobody can go through a career with ultimate success with never having had a complication or a failure. And I'll walk you through that. But at the end of the day, no matter you have risk or failure, it's about staying passionate to your goals. So this is the road less traveled. When we talk about going into academics, coming to meetings, getting more insight, there are all types of rules. And I'll speak to you from the perspective primarily of the surgeon scientist. Many of you are here to consume evidence, and many of you here are present. But remember, you start with failure at the beginning, not an end. You look at it, we hypothesize, and many of the hypotheses today at the IOA meeting haven't necessarily been met. But you see, when you look through this, these simple rules are intuitive. But the hard part is we absolutely have to do them. We have to actually not just talk, we have to actually do. And at the end of the day, you never end with, if you don't like what you're doing, you need to figure out what it is you're good at and then do it. In fact, Professor David Sackett said it was an overwhelming desire to address serious problems, and that gets down to the point of it. If we don't address serious problems as a community, we're not going to move our field forward. And if we're going to address serious problems, we have to spend a lot of time. Now, in India, the one thing I know for a fact is you have no shortage of patience and no shortage of ideas. And really what we have to do is figure out which of those ideas make sense to answer the big global questions. And in fact, that's the hard part. It's fun. It's extremely enjoyable to say we're starting a new trial. It's extremely enjoyable to say we're going to write and publish when you're at the meeting here. But you know the hard part? The hard part is the years you toil and toil away where you think your trial is not going to get done, things are not moving in the way you want it to move, and that is why every single one of you should not lose hope. That's why we come together, and that's how we get this job done. Professor Gordon Guyatt, who still works at McMaster today, many years ago, 20 years ago said, have two words in your mind when we were talking. He's been a mentor of mine for many years. And he said, think big. And I thought at that time, okay, that's a nice statement. It's a very nice statement, but what does it ultimately mean to think big? We can all have great ideas. We can all think of all the things we'd like to do. But fundamentally, it's only now in the last few years where I've looked back and reflected on how powerful that word is, and it's not just two words. And here's why. Most research findings, in fact, may be false. In fact, the most provocative paper that's been published by Professor Ioannidis, one of his highest cited papers, says just that. Why are papers not being used? Why is it not shifting the needle? Why is information being so problematic? Why do we have so much noise and not signal? It's because we have problems with focusing on hot topics. We have problems with all kinds of conflicts. But central, look at this, central to that issue is an issue that can be solved in India like this. Small studies are not a problem for this community, are not a problem for this country. You have an overwhelming amount of data. And if you come together, you can answer and resolve all of the challenges with small studies. In fact, that's what we hear. It takes a globe to answer these types of questions. We're no longer in this village where we're all siloed. North America cannot answer all of the world's problems. Canada certainly can't answer all the world's problems. But together, we absolutely can. So this is the point. We can talk and talk and talk. And today you're here and we can listen about it, but we have to decide what are we actually going to do. And so here's my challenge to you. When you think about research and when you think about quoting big ideas, ask yourself this question. Is the research I'm about to undertake, is it going to be important for everybody, not just a few? Is it going to allow me to create more people and get more connections globally? Are we going to work together on this project? Are we going to actually have more people part of our team after our project than there were before? And are we going to fundamentally contribute to the well-being of not just a few, but to many? And that will ultimately change the type of studies you do. Because if you get yes on all of these are big ideas. These are going to be big studies. But remember, as you go big, you must, by definition, go simpler. Complex ideas are rarely going to be able to be externally validated in multiple countries. What's important in North America or India or Africa or Australia or and so on may not always be the same. But if we go to the fundamental questions, everyone will have the same issue. And that's what we have to focus on. So that's why, right? Big ideas are by necessity simple ones, and they solve fundamental problems. And this now gets to the point of how do we get this done? Right? How do these groups and these dynamics actually happen? Well, we have more surgeons, right? We get more centers, we get more countries, and then by definition, we get more people. And this is my personal retrospective. So as I look back to the programs we've had, and I look back to all of this resource we were able to do, not one of these studies that was conducted was done in isolation. Not one of these studies was a single center. Not one of these studies involved just one country. Because ultimately, these questions have to be answered globally. And that got me to think about this. I've worked with so many individuals, many from India, and I've asked myself, you know, what is it about these individuals that I've had the privilege of working with that have been so successful that separates them from others that have had challenges in getting some of these projects done? So we did a study. We actually surveyed what we thought were, quote, highly successful surgeons. Now, you can argue what the criteria are, but fundamentally, department chairs, editors, presidents of major orthopedic associations were some of those groups. And we asked them simple things about what they do and how they live their life. And here, basic things, right? These individuals are productive individuals. Many have written many papers, many have edited books, have been involved in books, and many have received research funding. But when you ask them, why do you do what you do? This is the point. Not interested in the financial gain, not interested in the power. I just want new challenges. And by the way, these are the types of individuals that risk it all. They fail as well, but they get right back up and keep going. So you ask yourself if you have that motivation to take the risks and move forward. By the way, as you heard yesterday, if you're not personally looking inward to your own life and your own health, you're not going to be able to serve others. So you have to look at your own mental and physical well-being. Why is this talking about an orthopedic meeting? Are we talking about physical and mental well-being? Because at the end of the day, who you are and what you become is fully and completely based on what you do. Not what others think of you, what you do to yourself and how you move. And I think those are fundamental concepts. When you ask yourself this. This is funny. When you look at surveys around the world, and there's surveys that have been done by Gallup polls, you wouldn't be probably that surprised to know that 8 out of 10 people around the world, of the billion who were surveyed in this Gallup poll, were generally unsatisfied with their job. Generally unsatisfied with their work. And as you sit here, you say, how can you sit and live for years and years and years and not be satisfied with your job? The truth is, I would bet that there's many of you in this room right now would probably have that same mindset. There's parts of your day you just are not satisfied with. But this is what you can do to change it. The individuals who manage to breach it, in orthopedics for sure, are generally happy. And in fact, they don't look at success as a way to become happy. They're just happy. And if you generally find ways to be happy, success follows. If you follow what you love to do, success follows. So mental health, you've got to find a way to feel powerful inside. These individuals were doing just that. And in fact, when we ask these individuals who have been doing this work, working long hours, trying to balance their family life, trying to keep their mental and physical health, 1 in 3 of them said, this is the best time of my life. Now you can argue and say, well, that's not great, because 2/3 say it isn't. But the truth is, to be doing what you're doing and love it is what we all try to attain. And here's the point. We actually ran regression models to say, what factors predicted whether someone would say, this is the best time of my life in my surgical career? Well, they're generally happy people. They're happy with their career choice. They're intrinsically motivated. Intrinsic motivation is very different. For the trainees in the room who are going to write your exams, you have a big factor of fear as an extrinsic motivator of failure. But once you graduate and you get your job, then you have no one looking over you. That's when you have to say, what gets me up every single morning to do it? And when you watch your mentors and you watch the consultants who do it every morning, they're intrinsically motivated to do what they do. And that's what ultimately these individuals had. And you can see some of the other issues. But here's the things that weren't associated with being highly successful. Age is not it. So for those of you who think, I just have to wait my time, you can be successful at any stage in your life, but you have to fundamentally agree to put in the work and the time. Being more or less productive doesn't always lead to success. We can waste a lot of time writing small studies and things like that that may not lead to the same success as focusing on a bigger question. Being smart or not so smart rarely ever shows up in success, right? It's the mindset of grit. I will work to get this done. I will continue to work at it. And also, years in leadership were not associated. But we talk a lot about success. And as I learned from some time at Oxford and some wonderful presentations with my colleague and friends, Andy Carr and Richard Cantor, he said, you know, success is fine, but what's more interesting? Failure. We learn from our mistakes. And this is a truism, right? Right? The master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried. And that gets back to the first statement I made, which is, if you don't take risks and we don't keep trying, we're not going to move forward. In fact, Nobel laureates will say research is 99% failure, and that's an optimistic. If you're going to ask big questions, you have to be ready to fail. And that's fine. Those things happen. In fact, I will say on a personal note, every single trial we've conducted has always just barely succeeded, despite a series of these near fatal situations where I would sit down and say, okay, this is the end of this one. We have to give back millions of dollars because we just won't get this project done. And this is the most recent example where we started a trial. So I'll give you the story. In 2017, it's a PREP-IT trial. It's 10,000 patients we're going to recruit around the world. $14 million has been received for this study. And here we are in Baltimore, Maryland, talking about this study to a number of investigators who are going to help us in this trial. And when I'm up there talking, I have this pit in the middle of my stomach because I know this is now a several-year journey that requires the commitment of every single person. And it's a big opportunity for us to answer big, important questions. So it happens all the time. So yeah, of course, it's absolutely reasonable and expected that you'll have moments where you're in fear, and you're fear of all kinds of things. But here's the problem. When I look at our young learners today, and I won't speak to the learners in India, but I can tell you what's happening with the learners at our institution at McMaster. We're in a culture where people just are afraid to take enough risk because nobody wants to risk failure, which means we tend to take the easier road than the harder road because failure is an upsetting experience. And I would say, stay out of the comfort zone and get into your stretch zone. The stretch zone is a risk zone, which is say, you know what, I think I can get there. We should do this trial. Not 100, let's do 200. It means we might have to do more. Or I'm going to push this procedure a little bit more. I'm going to learn a bit more. I'm going to try something new. But don't become reckless. Reckless is not what we're looking for. We're not asking individuals to recklessly go out and fail. We're saying, you have a skill set, push yourself to where you believe you can go. So here's an example. We have a number of orthopedic surgical scientist trainees at our institution at McMaster, and I put them all through what I knew was going to be a very controlled failure experiment. We decided that we're going to try to climb a 12,000-foot peak in a day in Canada and Calgary, and none of them had any climbing experience, including myself. I knew this was going to go bad. I knew that we were not going to climb it, but they didn't know, and we started climbing, and it became a point where we got to halfway point, and we said, okay, this is our summit. And then people said, whoa, you didn't summit. You didn't summit. I said, okay, well, hold on here. What did you learn from this? Well, as one said, I realized that we had no basis for wanting to back out other than the fear of trying something new and being out of my comfort zone. In fact, we even popped a bottle of champagne halfway down, and people were climbing in front of us, said, why are they celebrating they didn't get to the top? But the point was, it wasn't about getting to the top. It was the goal of trying to get to the top. And that was it. Those 4 individuals came back and then said, what have I been worrying about now? We've done all kinds of things. We put ourselves in a risk environment. We survived it. We did it controlled. We were with people. And now we're going to push ourselves in our job. And that gets to the point, right? The epiphany that I've had, and my epiphany has always happened when I'm visiting India. Always. This was us last year. We had just finished a course with Professor Sanchetti, and we had just done a course, and this is a colleague of mine, Dr. Petrazor, and we had just taken a moment to go to Nepal, and we were staring out. And at that moment, I had this epiphany. I said, you know what do we do here? What we do is we spend all of our time thinking, if I do research and I get good at it, I'll just do more and more and more research. If I want to be a good orthopedic surgeon, I'll just do more and more and more orthopedic surgery. And I will work later hours and longer hours, and everything else that I do outside of my career or my work becomes smaller and smaller. So that 20% becomes 10%, 10 becomes 5, and before long, you're doing 100% work, right? And nothing else. And that, to me, as I look back, is a fatal, fatal mistake. Fatal mistake. In fact, if you look at highly successful individuals, and I think we can argue at this point that no one would argue that Jeff Bezos, being the richest man in the world, running one of the big companies of the world, Amazon, has something to tell us. And he says one thing: do not live a life in which you regret things that you could have done and should have done. So he says, my model in life is to look at things that reduce regret. He has a regret minimization model. And by doing that, what he's saying is, be in the moment, be open to experience, and absolutely do not take that 20% of things that ultimately can help you be better at what you do. And here's the theory. The theory is that we can all search for all this and get good at what we do, but there's no guarantee we will ultimately achieve it. Especially in the area we are in now. There are many of us in this room, I know there's many youngsters who have never actually, don't know what it's like to handwrite essays and submit it. People don't know what the very first floppy disk was. People don't necessarily know what the big phones were. But we've come through that era, and we're in an era right now where we have so much hyper-connectedness that it's problematic. And in fact, what has been one of the biggest challenges came in 2009. And you know what 2009 did? It created a real scientific formula for getting most people addicted to their campaigns. One thing, the thumbs up. In 2009, Facebook said, we aren't getting people back to our site. We've got to create something that gives them a response, a dopamine hit. And guess what? The dopamine hit became the like button. In fact, there's evidence. Facebook addiction activates some part of the brain, the same part of the brain as cocaine does. It's that it's that dopamine hit. So that's a very different time of world we're in. And we have to figure out a way in which we manage the things we do in a different way. And here's the real challenge. In an age where we're supposed to be so creative, right? So creative, innovation. Everyone talks about innovation. Our creativity scores as adults are getting lower and lower and lower and lower. And so how do you ultimately become a creative scientist? Well, the challenge is most of us, and I guarantee in this room, most of us believe we are not living up to our creative potential. We could do more, right? Most of us believe that, I have all kinds of ideas. But you know what? Here's the point. If you have lots of ideas, you're imaginative. You're not creative. Creative means you act. You actually act on the idea you have. So if you want to do the next big study, don't talk about it. Start acting. Take those risks. And in fact, this behavior is learned. So for the mentors in this room and the scientists in this room, each and every one of you can do something to move this forward. And that's what we're trying to do here, right? At McMaster, we try to create creativity workshops, reinstill that. We get back to fundamentals of just things that matter, writing, putting some thought on paper, getting out of the office, out of the four walls, and having meetings out in nature and getting the juices flowing. Making sure we interact with different people, interact with people all over from different backgrounds, and have interesting discussions to fuel what you're trying to do. So here's my point, my last few slides. I suggest you make a pledge today. Be open to new experiences, try new things. Make sure you're enjoying the things you do. Do not reduce that 20% of the things that you do outside of work will actually make you better at your job. The best years I've had are the last few in which I've actually done the least amount of time writing and doing research. Our research has gone much better because we've been much more creative in the things we're doing because we do other things that bring that to us. Just assume things are going to go wrong. Assume it, but embrace it. And finally, fundamentally, know it's okay to start again. So for many of you who say, oh, that's not for me, right? You find your passion. If your passion is you want to do this, here's the point. You can't teach passion. So if you don't love what you do or the subspecialty, I tell trainees all the time, don't think about taking a job because that's the job that somebody else thinks you want to do. Do the job you want to do, be good at it. If you're good at it, other things will follow. You have to fall in love, right? And this is my last slide. Which one's the Picasso? When you look at that, you immediately say, oh, well, it must be that very last one, right? But here's the point. Picasso didn't become Picasso and what we call Picasso until the last stages of his life. It's never too late to start again. And quite frankly, every part of his years and his phases in his life were important to who he became. And that's what I suggest that we think about. So think about this. And this is how I look at life. I'd rather be at the bottom of a ladder I actually want to climb than on the top of the one I don't. Thank you very much.